I am Abigail, the wife of Nabal of Moan. I am a follower of Yahweh. My maidens called me intelligent and beautiful, but I only wanted peace in the household. I often felt my life was wasted on a man as harsh and evil as my husband. His name, Nabal, means fool. He was of the house of Caleb, and he had wealth beyond measure, 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. I often tended to our business of necessity, as my husband was known to drink heavily. Recently, the entire nation of Israel had just mourned the death of the prophet Samuel. He was buried in his hometown of Ramah. That spring, we were shearing sheep in Carmel, while many of our shepherds were with the rest of the sheep in the wilderness. Our shepherds told me of a band of men who had guarded them in the wilderness. They said they were a wall to us both by night and by day, all the while we were with them keeping the sheep. Those men belonged to David, the son of Jesse, the one who had slain Goliath and was now fleeing for his life from Saul. When I heard David had sent a word of peace to Nabal, delivered by a group of 10 of his young men, my heart leapt. His message was humble and polite. Peace be to you, and peace be to your house, and peace be to all that you have. While you have been shearing your sheep in Carmel, we have been protecting your shepherds and your flock. Not one of them are missing. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Please give whatever you have at hand to your servants and to your son David. It is a feast day and a time for generosity. But my husband sneered, Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? Shall I take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed for my shearers and give it to men who have come from who knows where? After they departed, one of my servants came to me saying, Look, David has sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, and he scolded them. But truly, David's men were very good to us. I knew then that ruin would come upon us. He went on, Now therefore know this, and consider what you should do, for harm is determined against our master and against all his house. For he is such a son of Belial that one cannot even speak to him. This was no time for fear. I ordered my servants to load donkeys with provisions, 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep already prepared, 5 seahs of parched grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs. My hands trembled as I tied the last cord, but my heart was calm. I told them, Go on before me. Behold, I come after you. And I did not tell Nabal. I wondered what it would be like to meet David. I prayed with every step, O Lord, turn away David's wrath. Don't let innocent men die because of my foolish husband. When I came over the ridge, I saw him. He was angry. I heard him saying to the men surrounding him, Surely in vain I have guarded all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belonged to him, and he has returned me evil for good. David vowed then to kill all the males of the house of Naboth. Without hesitation I dismounted, fell on my face before him, and said, On me alone, my lord, be the guilt. My voice shook, but Yahweh gave me words to carefully diffuse the situation. Please let your servant speak in your ears, and hear the word of your servant. Let not my lord regard my husband Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. I had no idea that you had sent the young men asking for provisions. I have sent them by the hand of my servants, as you can see. Please let your men accept this gift. I looked up into David's eyes, still filled with fury, and continued, Now then, my lord, as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, because Yahweh has held you back from coming to bloodshed and from seeking vengeance with your own hand of violence this day, let your enemies be as Nabal, as fools. Please forgive the trespass of your maidservant, for the Lord will certainly make you an enduring house, because you fight the battles of the Lord, and you are not an evil man. Saul has risen to pursue you and take your life, but your life shall be bound in the bundle of the living with the Lord your God. But the lives of your enemies shall be slung out, as from the pocket of a sling. Further, one day when you are king, this will be no grief to you, that you have shed blood without cause, or that you have avenged yourself, instead of waiting on the Lord. When Yahweh has done well for you, remember me, your maidservant. The men were all quiet, watching to see what David would do next. Then David, a man of God, realized what I said was true. His anointing from Yahweh, the Holy Spirit of God, was speaking to his heart. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me. Blessed is your advice, and blessed are you who have kept me this day from blood guilt and from avenging myself with my own hand. The Lord has surely kept me back from hurting your household. If you had not come when you did, all your males would have been dead by morning. Relief flooded me. He accepted my gift of food, saying, Go up in peace to your house. See, I have heeded your voice and respected your person. When I returned home, Nabal was drunk, feasting like the feast of a king with his friends. I said nothing until morning. When he was sober, when I told him what had happened, his heart died within him, and he became like a stone. I think he was literally scared to death. 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. News reached David, and he said, "Blessed be the Lord who has avenged the insult I received at the hands of Nabal." When David's messengers came to Carmel, I was still pondering all that had passed, the mercy of God on us, the memorable encounter with David, and then the death of Nabal. His servants spoke happily. "David has sent us to you to ask you to become his wife." I bowed low, heart trembling. I said, "Behold, your handmaid is a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord." It never occurred to me to say no. I quickly rode with them to David on a donkey, with 5 maidens attending me, and there, in the hills of Judah, I became the wife of David. He greeted me with warmth and promise. His eyes, once fierce with wrath, now shone with peace. But peace was fleeting. Saul still sought David's life, and the wilderness was our home. We lived as wanderers, moving from stronghold to stronghold, trusting in God who guided us. Abishai, David's nephew, told me that while they were in Ziph, the 2 of them went into Saul's camp in the middle of the night and stole his water jug and spear. But David would not lift his hand against the Lord's anointed. Sometimes, in the stillness, David would speak of his longing for the tabernacle of God and for the day when he might worship freely again. He talked of a coming Messiah and often sang songs he had written for me. I would listen in awe, and my soul would marvel within me, knowing I was witnessing the shaping of one of Israel's greatest kings. When David first told me we were all moving to the land of the Philistines, my heart stopped. He said, "There is nothing else for us to do. We must escape to the land of the Philistines. Then Saul will not seek me any longer." I knew he spoke not from lack of faith, but from weariness. For years he had wandered from stronghold to cave, always looking over his shoulder for Saul's men. Still, it was no small thing to dwell among the people of Goliath. When we crossed over to the Philistine territory, he brought our entire company of around 600 people to Achish, king of Gath, asking for permission to take refuge in the foreign city. Achish received us with favor, and we dwelt in the city of Gath for a short time. Ahinoam and I were both uneasy about living with our longtime enemies. Oh yes, I was not David's only wife. David had married Ahinoam of Jezreel before he knew me. There was also his wife, Michal, Saul's daughter, but none of us knew if David would ever see her again. She had been given to another man named Palti. For myself, I was content with the portion that the Lord had allotted for me. As time went on, David asked the king of Gath for some of our own land away from the city, where we could graze sheep and live peacefully. Many of the men had their wives and children with them. Achish gave David a small town named Ziklag, so we lived there for a year and 4 months. The terrain of Ziklag was stony and dry, yet it became our refuge. Every morning, David and his men would go out, and when they returned at night, I listened as he told us of his raids. They were attacking the Geshurites, the Gizites, and the Amalekites, all who were enemies of Israel. David told the Philistine king, though, that he had raided small towns in Judah. That way, Achish was convinced that David truly was against Israel and was proving himself trustworthy. As long as David shared the booty with Achish, he asked no questions. At first, my heart was troubled. Deception, even for a righteous cause, was essentially lying and forbidden by the Torah. But I learned to see the hand of God moving in hidden ways. David never raised his sword against his own people. The Lord used this time in Ziklag to weaken Israel's enemies and to prepare David for ruling Israel. Ziklag grew into a small village of laughter and fellowship. I baked bread with the wives of David's men, tended the wounded, and helped teach the children. When the men were gone for many days, we prayed for their return and kept watch on the horizon. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I would hear David singing quietly while playing his harp. "In peace I will both lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety." While in Ziklag, David grew even closer to the Lord, and I, though in the territory of the Philistines, without the wealth and comforts I was used to, found peace, knowing that the God who had once restrained David's hand from vengeance against Nabal still guided his every step.
Abigail, to me, is one of the most intriguing characters in the Old Testament. The Bible says she was both intelligent and beautiful. She and her husband Nabal, which means folly or fool, who names their kids that, were very well off and ran a successful business raising livestock. They lived in Moan, Judah, on the ancestral lands of Caleb, the very same Caleb that crossed the Jordan with Joshua. The Jewish Midrash describes Abigail as one of the most beautiful women in history of Israel. She's ranked right up there with Sarah and Rahab. At this point, Abigail had no children. Let's take a look at the 3 main characters in this Bible episode: Nabal, Abigail, and David. Now, Nabal was not just ill-informed or foolish. He is described in the text as being a son of Belial. Here is a definition of a son of Belial. It refers to a worthless, wicked, or lawless people, stemming from the Hebrew Belayala, meaning worthlessness or without worth, used in the Bible for rebellious individuals, often portrayed as agents of evil or darkness. Also, in the Hebrew, the name Nabal means not only fool, but really means moral perversity. So how did this beautiful, intelligent woman end up marrying Nabal? I don't know. What do you think? Maybe it was an arranged marriage. Now, David's men were in the area and protecting business owners from bands of raiders that might steal the sheep or attack the local shepherds. It was customary, according to Deuteronomy 26:13, to share sustenance with these divine protectors, especially on a feast day or a celebration day from the harvest. Nabal was feasting in his own home, and he had planned a party for his shearers. But he denied David's humble request for food and sent his men back to David, not only with a no answer, but with an insult too. Nabal saw David and his men as runaway slaves, defectors from the legitimate army of Israel, and a band of outlaws. He really knew how to push David's buttons, and considering David was worn out and weary of living off the land and running from Saul, he was especially vulnerable to the insults. In Nabal's response to David's men, he revealed not only his selfishness and foolishness, but also lack of understanding, that all he had really came from God. In this, Nabal not only offended David, but God as well. In contrast to Nabal, Abigail was clearly godly and not evil. She had a gift of discernment, and while Nabal saw David as an outlaw, Abigail knew better. Her actions and her words carefully planned when she spoke to David. Abigail knew David would someday be king, and he would have a dynasty. This was before God told this to David. She knew David fought God's battles. She claimed he was free from evil, a moral and good man. Abigail stops David from killing innocent men by gently reminding him that not only would this not please God, but it would not be a wise thing to do politically and morally. And she told him so. She also said to David that the soul of David was bound up in the bundle of life with the Lord. This is from 1 Samuel 25:29. This Hebrew saying signifies ultimate divine protection, equating a person's life to a precious item secured in a bundle, kept safe by God against all threats, both in this world and the next, implying eternal preservation and value. It is a promise that God guards the lives of his people, ensuring their continuity and eternal well-being, a concept often seen on Jewish tombstones as a wish for the soul's eternal rest. To be bound in the bundle of life is to know that you're protected, valued, and cared for deeply. Here's what she said in plain English. Saul is after you, but you are tight with the Lord, and he will cast out your enemies like a stone from a sling. She reminded David that someday, after God had established him as king of Israel, that God had cared and protected David, and he would not want to have shed blood carelessly and cause an offense by avenging himself. She asked David for a favor. Would he remember her kindness someday when he was king? Would he remember that it was her that stopped him from sinning? This really might have blown up into a big issue. Could killing the servants of Nabal have started a blood feud in Judah? David would need all the clans of Judah to support him for kingship. David recognized that God sent Abigail, and he says so. It must have been a relief to him to find another soul that knew Yahweh like he did. He sees God in her as she saw God in him. He blesses her for stopping him from shedding innocent blood and blesses her for her advice. She was clearly on David's team. David received the food she sent for his men, and he sent her home in peace. Clearly, David was offended by Nabal's treatment, and without consulting Yahweh, was about to make a huge mistake. I'm in agreement with David. God really did send Abigail, not only to save her own people, but to stop David from sinning as well. While David was very angry when he started to speak with Abigail, by the end of the discussion, he realized his error and changed his thinking and his mind. Nabal had a heart attack when he learned what had happened with David and his men. Was he literally scared to death? No one knows. 10 days later, God smote Nabal, as it says in the scriptures, in their home in Moan. God truly did avenge Nabal's poor treatment of David and his men in his own way and his own timing. David now proposes to Abigail by sending his servants to her in Carmel, where the sheep shearing was continuing on. He had already taken 2 other wives. What was he thinking? Was he taken in by her beauty, her love for the Lord, her intelligence? Was he feeling guilty for Nabal's death and determined to make sure she would be cared for? Would Nabal's business and property stay in her hands? Abigail accepted his proposal quickly. What was she thinking? She was confident David would someday be king. She was sure that he was anointed by God for this purpose. He was a man that listened to wisdom, even from a woman in those days. David was an excellent, hardworking, and skilled man. He had a great reputation and certainly was a better man than the one she'd been married to. She and her maidens would be cared for and have protection. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Abigail's response to David was that she would serve David and his servants, implying that she would be honored to be his wife. Quickly, she gathered her maidens and belongings and followed David's servants to join him. What happens next to Abigail and David? Don't miss Lesson 8. We will hear from another of David's wives, Ahinoam.
And the lover of my soul, Creator God, He's your